Back to Westbury 101. I'm Brian Westbury, Chief Economist at First Trust Portfolios. Remember, we want to be the antidote to conventional wisdom. So I guess the conventional wisdom I'm talking about today is two-sided. Depends on which side of the political aisle you're on, and that's what you argue on TV. And I finally decided that politics makes us stupid. I have seen economists on TV argue that the real definition of recession has changed. These are economists that have been around for 20 or 30 years. They know better than this. They absolutely know that the real definition of recession is not 2 quarters in a row of declining real GDP. That's what you find in the dictionary. When you go to the National Bureau of Economic Research, go to their webpage, the Business Cycle Dating Committee, they explain how they do these things. And it is a general decline in economic activity, and they look at income, spending, jobs, production. They look at all kinds of things to decide this. And the reason that they do this is that GDP can sometimes be a really weird number. Inventories go up or down, trade, net exports go up and down, and so what we want to do is get at a broad definition. And so yes, we have had 2 quarters in a row now, minus 1.6% real GDP in the first quarter, minus 0.9% in the second quarter. But how can we call that a recession when average job growth in the first 6 months of this year was 457,000 jobs a month? Compared to any period, that is booming job growth. If you look at industrial production, it's up 5.2% at an annualized rate so far in the first 6 months. That's a huge number as well. When we look at corporate earnings, the second quarter numbers for the S&P are coming out right now. Revenue growth is up 10% from a year ago. Profit growth is up 3% from a year ago. And 70% of the companies that are reporting are beating estimates. And I want you to really think about that, because comparing this year's second quarter to last year's second quarter, 2021, that's a difficult comparison. Why? Because in the second quarter of 2021, that was the peak of government stimulus. And that brings me to a really important point. We are living through unprecedented times. People call what happened in 2020 a recession. It wasn't. It was a lockdown, and we have never locked down the economy before. But if you think of it as a recession, then now we've been in recovery. But this hasn't been a recovery, it's been a reopening. And so using normal words to describe the economy lately, I believe hasn't even made sense. Not only that, we've distorted the data. Retail sales are up about 30% right now from where they were in February 2020. Now, if we would have taken that same period of time and did it pre-pandemic, we would only be up about 7, maybe 8%. In other words, the retail sales grew 4 or 5 times faster than normal. How is that possible when you've locked down the economy, when you're in the middle of a pandemic? The only way it's possible is by using our kids' credit cards. And remember, too, that during the pandemic, services were really hard to come by. Cruise ships, airlines, theaters, sporting events, all of those things. So everybody spent that money on goods. And so this year, in fact, we see it in the second quarter GDP data we got today, and that is goods spending was negative, but services spending was positive. And my belief is that all these distorted numbers are going to leave us with no real recession this year, even though the GDP data declined for 2 quarters in a row. Profits will be up at the end of the year from where they were at the end of last year. Revenues will be up, and it is the services side of the economy that will keep us growing and creating jobs throughout the rest of this year. Now, all of that does not mean that we won't have a recession. Another way to think about what we did is that by locking down, it's the equivalent of a car accident, and you broke your leg in the car accident, and they gave you morphine to cover the pain. And so now what's happening is the morphine's wearing off, and the pain of the broken leg is rising in your feelings, and as a result, you're gonna have a tough year. I think in the next 18 to 24 months, we will have a recession. I absolutely believe that. I just don't think one has started yet. Now, here's the fascinating thing about politics. It has an impact on the Fed. And if we look at the 10-year Treasury today, yield, it's under 2.7% after hitting over 3.3. It has come down at least 60 basis points in the last few months because what's happening with the political argument out there that we're in recession, the pressure is on the Fed not to hike rates anymore. We'll find out whether they do, but what the market is saying is that they're pretty close to being done, or that if they raise them again a couple of times, they're going to cut them early next year. And what's fascinating about this is that if we take corporate profits today and a 2.7% 10-year Treasury, our model of the stock market says we are undervalued. So here we are in the midst of this massive debate about whether we are in a recession or not, and the stock market's undervalued all over again. It was fairly valued a few months ago. Now it's undervalued. At the same time, if the Fed does stop short, we're going to end up with inflation lasting longer and being more persistent than people believe. That's good for commodities. That's good for materials companies. That's good for companies with lots of fixed assets. And so this year, my belief is that we still, I know there are going to be people that yell and scream at me. Believe me, it's happening on Twitter already about this, but I still believe we won't have recession. That doesn't mean there isn't one coming. There will be. We're going to have a tough 18 to 24 months as the morphine wears off and the pain of our broken leg shows up. But right now, we aren't in one. What I want people to do more than anything is follow the truth and not the politics. Yes, things are tough, but they're distorted because we've done unprecedented things. And so don't let them take you off the edge of a cliff in fear. It's the wrong thing to do right now. Thank you so much for visiting Westbury 101. We'll see you next time.